identify some of those actors that you mentioned and why they're important?
Absolutely. You know, it's a well-known fact that of the 100 largest economic entities in the world, half of them are corporations. And some of those are actually state-owned Chinese companies. But even if you remove those, a company like Apple, which now has the largest market capitalization, you know, its annual revenues alone, it has no debt. It's sitting on about $80 billion of cash. Well, that's larger than the GDP of over 100 countries, which is half the countries in the entire world. And that's just one tech company that makes, you know, iPhones and other gadgets. Royal Dutch Shell, you know, Exxon. Regardless of the sector, there are mega corporations. Mega corporations exert an enormous amount of diplomatic influence as well. They conduct their own diplomacy. When I go to emerging markets like in Central Asia, you know, the offices of oil companies are the embassies of those companies. They're nothing less than that. The access they have, the leverage they have, the technology they possess that governments want and need to develop their mineral sectors and oil industry and so forth are absolutely essential.
So are you worried by that? Are you worried by that?
Well, if you think about it, it's always been the case, whether it's the British East India Company of then or Royal Dutch Shell and Sinopec of today. So the notion that corporate power overstates or leverage overstates is something new is actually a mistake. The reason it doesn't worry me is because I look actually at the ground level detail. If you take a country like Nigeria, one thinks of Nigeria as a place where Shell came in the 1950s and 60s, discovered or has exploited the oil reserves, has, you know, the Nigerian government has earned hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue streams that they never would have otherwise. Is there an indigenous Nigerian oil sector with the technological capacity to extract that volume of oil? Of course not. Without Shell, Nigeria would be nothing. And I think it's important for us to realize this, not to put on a pedestal the idea of the state. And the state is in many cases truly non-functional without the corporate support that it needs to actually build itself. So I insist that we think in a much more complex way about the relationship between the public and the private sectors and view them as necessary partners. If you want to grow the ailing economies of the Western world today, it's not going to happen through greater fiscal commitments and outlays, because those don't exist. The money is not there in the age of austerity. We do need the private sector to train workers, to build skills, to employ them, to think about preparing them for new technologies. In the United States, there have been promises of worker retraining for over a decade, and that was when globalization was a big threat, and it still is. But now you have robotic automation, outsourcing of labor to robots, right? Who's preparing workers for that? It's certainly not the government. So if we continue to live in this false dichotomy of public power versus private power, we'll never get anywhere in dealing with these issues.
So you're talking about the different state actors, we went on a tangent there slightly. So you mentioned, okay, corporations are one of these new emerging actors. Are there any others you could identify?
Absolutely. I put equal emphasis on civil society, the role of NGOs, charitable organizations, foundations, activists, networks. These are all very important players. I like to remind people that the World Health Organization, which is the intergovernmental body tasked with overseeing global public health, countering the spread of infectious disease and other issues, 40% of its budget actually comes from the AIDS Foundation, which is of course a private philanthropic NGO. So the reality of the world, if you dig beneath the details, is not so much about these pure models of governments are accountable and they should be in charge and NGOs need to listen to them. The truth is that we're funding these intergovernmental organizations through private charitable initiatives. Now ask yourself, what have been some of the greatest revelations and revolutions in solving global crises in the last decade? Where do ideas like microcredit come from? Did microcredit come from the World Bank? No, it came from an NGO, right, in Bangladesh. But now every country on the planet has microcredit programs. And it emerged organically, horizontally, not from the top down and not from governments, right? We don't need to have hierarchical global regulation to have knowledge sharing and learning. And microcredit is one example. Why is climate change on the global agenda today? It wasn't put on the agenda by one government or another government. Scientists, academics, activists, they're the ones who pushed for the green agenda in international negotiations starting in the 1960s and 1970s. It's extremely important to remember that. The human rights agenda as well. So whatever the issue is, some of the major global problem-solving movements have actually been advanced by civil society like you.
So in order to get things done in today's world, what sort of skills do people need to have? Has the skill set changed in order to be successful getting things done today?
That's a really great question, Chris, and I think that, in fact, yes, one of the key skill sets is actually having experience working in different kinds of stakeholders. You should have some experience understanding how the public sector operates. That doesn't mean working for the federal government. You could be working for a city, a municipality. Cities are, of course, the locus of so much activity economically and otherwise today. And it could be working for civil society organizations, NGOs, being a volunteer, so that you understand more grassroots kinds of issues. And then, of course, working for companies and understanding business models as well, investment and so forth. So I believe that to be a really good multifunctional leader today, you should have some experience with the .com world, the .gov world, the .org world, the .edu world, and in fact, good governance is actually the synthesis of the strengths of these different players.
You mentioned cities there, and I know that's been a recent focus for a lot of your research. How do you see the role of cities changing, playing out over the coming years?
Well, the role of cities has become so much more prominent for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, in terms of the public appreciation, is the urbanization phenomenon. The fact that most of the world's population today now lives in cities. By 2040, at least 70% of the world's population lives in cities. 5 years from now, we really won't be obsessed with this meme of cities, because the city will be everything in this.
Well, there is.
We won't have to say, well, now let's have a conversation on cities. We will only be talking about cities as the drivers and growth engines. And that actually represents a very important shift away, of course, in thinking about countries, doesn't it? So I've been looking at that shift in authority very much, not just the shift in population, the shift in authority. The fact that we rely on mayors as much as we rely on presidents to get things done. And I talk to mayors all over the world who say, you know, we are the key, we are the barrier in a way between success and chaos in the country, because we make sure the trash gets collected. And it's true, mayors are close enough to smell and see, they have their ears to the ground. And this is why, not surprisingly, there's a broad trend around the world of mayors becoming presidents. The next biggest job in many countries, after being mayor of the largest city or capital city, is to run the country. And in a way, it's the best training. Sometimes, in some cases, it's a harder job to run the city than the country. In some cases, they also overlap. But I've been watching this around the world over the last decade. The accelerating rate at which mayors become presidents. And I don't think this is at all surprising, because they demonstrate their effectiveness at a very tangible sort of level. And I think this is one of the things that fascinates me about cities. The other, though, is technology. How will we achieve sustainable urbanization? A lot of people talk about what the great challenges of the 21st century are, whether they are poverty, climate change, human rights, and so on and so on. I want to talk about the solutions. And if I had to sum up in exactly 2 words what the secret to global stability in the 21st century is, I would say sustainable urbanization. We will not achieve that in an overpopulated world without thinking about the role of technology much more seriously than we do today. Some cities are doing amazing things, reducing carbon emissions, creating green economic jobs, and so forth. And that's what I like to research.